Hey everyone, it is April the 2nd, and God's people are still dealing with the thorns, the Midianites. And Gideon has been called to fight battles with them, and God has whittled down his army. And sometimes God does this. He does this to prove, to ensure that he gets the glory. When we are at our weakest, and we'll see here, we see in our story of Judges 8, when we're at our weakest is when God really shows off. I know that there are times when, more times than not, when I'm preparing to go and speak, inevitably, or to do some type of ministry. Maybe I've gone somewhere on a retreat to do some writing, or maybe I'm getting ready to leave my family and to go for an event. Inevitably, something happens. More than one something. My assistant that travels with me can vouch, Linda. It really is. It's like literally all of hell breaks loose, and the enemy pulls out all the stops. And there have been days when she and I would get to an event for a weekend of ministry. And a weekend of ministry is just that. It is a weekend of ministry. It is your own. You are ministering with people, to people, eating with them, having conversation with them, worshiping. The only time you're not in ministry is when you're asleep, when you're on weekend events. And there are times when she and I have arrived at our destination when we have had very limited sleep. We are exhausted, just like Gideon and his army of 300. And it's all because the enemy is fighting against us. He doesn't want God's people to be successful. Same here. He doesn't want God's people to be successful and to have victory. And the same thing happens with me in this situation that I was sharing with. And the same thing happens with you. When you are doing something for God, you are inevitably going to be attacked by the enemy, because the enemy is threatened by anything that you're doing for the kingdom of God and to advance the kingdom of God. And I just have to say very tenderly that if you don't experience spiritual attacks, ask yourself exactly what am I doing for the kingdom? Because it's those who aren't in the trenches of ministry and doing kingdom work that seem to be unbothered and kind of ignored by the enemy, because those individuals aren't a threat to the kingdom of God in the advancement of the kingdom of God. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, ask, Lord, what am I doing for you? Maybe I need to take it up a notch. But so I don't know this battle fatigue here, because this is actual physical battle. But I do know ministry fatigue, and I understand what that is, because the battles that are going on in the heavenlies when I prepare for ministry, they exhaust me. And here on earth, I can remember one specific incident. We all have cars in our family, and at one point, and we do have like an extra vehicle, an older vehicle that it's more valuable to us to keep than it is to sell. Maybe y'all have one of those that we haul things around in. But at one point, my vehicle was the only one that didn't have anything wrong with it. And he attacks us. And then let me back up. And then the one vehicle, that extra vehicle that my son was driving at the time, met up. The grill of it met up with a deer on the highway. So it's one thing after another, and it weakens our resolve. It really does. But it's when we are at our weakest, I know for sure that I've seen in my own life that God is the strongest. And when we know when we're out of the way and we have nothing to give and he gets the glory, we can celebrate that with him. So how does one continue to go on when they're exhausted? Because this is what happened with Gideon. He was exhausted from battle, and he had battle fatigue. And what we can do is what Gideon did is consider God's past faithfulness when we examine what's in the future. When we look at our future obstacles, look at God's past faithfulness. Okay, I don't see how this is going to come out. However, I do know that there is a history of victory in my life in this area. And even though this is a really big obstacle, God proved himself faithful before, and he's not in the business of not being faithful. So I'm going to trust him and move forward. So consider God's past faithfulness when we look at future obstacles. That will help us re-energize ourselves, is what it does for us. That old hymn, count your many blessings, name them one by one. Count your many blessings, see what God has done. It goes along. That's exactly what we need to do. Count those blessings. God, I know you've done this before, and I know that you'll do this again. I don't know how. I don't see it, but I trust that you'll make it happen. And here's something else that we need to understand is that people are going to disappoint us, but God will remain true. He came upon people that he thought he could count on the east side that would give him food. And that wasn't the case. And we cannot put our trust and our energy and the state of our resolve in someone else's hands. We just can't do that, because they are going to let us down every single time. Not because they don't love us, not because they don't want us to be successful, but because we are leaving up to them what only God can accomplish. So let's not put that pressure on some other person, because when they let us down, that's going to bring us even further away and pull us further down in our resolve. And then lastly, Gideon discovered that victory, as I've already mentioned, can be experienced at the end of weakness. When we're at our very end, we cannot even imagine lifting a fork to feed ourselves. We can count on victory. And then we're at a place where we give God the glory, and he deserves it, and we know it, and we celebrate it, and we have a moment with God like we've never had before. Because I believe that God whittled down his army so that he could prove himself to Gideon. And I believe that God whittles down our resolve and our confidence in ourselves and our own abilities so that he can prove himself faithful to us and get the glory. We'll see you tomorrow on Read Through the Word.